This is Futuristic episode 5. We're recording this on the 9th of June, 2023, at 12:38 p.m. on a Friday afternoon. Getting a bit warm in my office up here in Brisbane. How are things down in sunny Melbourne? Steve Sammartino, Australia's leading futurist.
Self-proclaimed.
No, I proclaimed it as well.
Yeah,
so
good. Now I've had a few people sort of say that. I always say, if you're a futurist out there and you want to have the debate, any topic, anytime, no prep required. So I'm looking out the window. It's cloudy, overcast, and cool. So it's not super hot, Mr. Riley.
Well, that's good. I wish I was there. Okay, let's get into it. I'm going to start my stopwatch because we're going to run on a timer again this week.
Yes, we are.
Steve, tell me about what you have done in the world of emerging tech in the last week that has, what are your wins? What are your losses?
So I did 3 keynote speeches this week.
Got ChatGPT to write them all?
Of course. And in fact, I had a soft robot of myself turn up and I just stayed in bed. So no,
soft robot.
A soft robot. That's what it is. It's soft robotics.
Right.
That's the next evolution is exoskeletons, which are soft. I did one for the rail industry, and that was interesting. It was online, so it was really hard. It was one of those rare online ones again, where they were all interstate and we all did it on Zoom, and that's like really tough. It's like pulling teeth because you're trying to extract energy through the screen, and most people have a little dot just with their initials. It's really tough. So I did that one, and then I did some emceeing and hosting in Sydney, which was that was good. That was like one of those. It was called the DLT, Digital Life something, I should know. Anyway, and that was, again, a really interesting one because it was a zillion sponsors and different keynote areas and stages. But I had one this morning, which was inspiring. It was at the tech school where I grew up in Werribee, the Wyndham Tech School. And they had some of the best kit I've ever seen. 3D printers, drones, CNC machines, all sorts of robotics, material science, extraordinary.
They still smell like a sewer in Werribee?
That hurts my feelings. That hurts me. And I thought that you were more mature than that, Cameron. But here's one thing that I noticed. There was a key takeout. And the key takeout was a lot of people are still unaware of AI's capabilities. Everyone's using ChatGPT, but you know what they're really using it to do? On average, I'm going to say write them an email. I mean, it's more than that, but they're basically doing that. Find me this. They're still using it like a Google search. Like, that's the number one error everyone is making. Instead of Google giving you 10 options, they want ChatGPT to give them a singular option. People aren't like going back and layering or putting things in there and asking it to summarize. People aren't really using it that well. I mean, the basic 10 things you can use ChatGPT for, I think we get in this wormhole that we think people are like us, even though it's got massive awareness, people aren't really using it very well. And that's my key insight for the week.
Well, it depends. I mean, it depends on how you define really well. I mean, people are using it based on where they're at. But one of the things I have discovered about myself, and we've talked about this before on the show, like 4 months ago, right? Let's say when 3.5 came out at the end of last year, or when 4 came out a few months ago, I remember being at a point going, holy shit, this is cool. Oh, what do I do with it? And I spent like the first week trying to figure out, what do I actually do with this thing? Now I use it, I don't know, 20, 30 times a day, often enough that I keep hitting my limits on 4. It keeps telling me I have to shut up for an hour until I have more questions. But what I found, I was saying this to Chrissy last night, it's like this recursion process. The more I use it, the more ways I think of how to use it. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm doing stuff in Excel now, and that's primarily where I use it. There are situations where I hadn't even thought I had a problem. And now I'm like, maybe there's a way that I can use Excel to do this. And I'll say to GPT, hey, I've got this idea. Is there some way I can do it? And it goes, yeah, absolutely. So there's like new ideas coming up in my head all the time that GPT has enabled my brain to think up things that I didn't know were a problem, ways that I've been doing things. Like, I run a lot of spreadsheets for the investing side of the business, and I would be cutting and pasting a lot of data in from different sources. And I start thinking, well, maybe there's a way of automating this now. And I'll ask GPT and it'll cook up something for me. It's just this process of just gradually becoming more and more comfortable with the fact. I was saying to Chrissy last night, like, I'm almost blasé about the existence of ChatGPT now. Like something that a year ago I would have thought was at least 10, maybe 20 years away. Access to this kind of artificial intelligent assistant, now I just take it for granted. Like I'm just using it. I'll ask it to come up with a formula for me for Excel, and it'll give me one. It'll be, let's say it starts the formula at A1 because I didn't give it good enough information when the data actually starts at A5. I could go in and change it from A1 to A5 in the formula myself. But I'm so lazy now. I just go, okay, can you do that again, but just change A1 to A5? And he goes, yeah, sure, absolutely, I can do that. It's just like this blasé fact that I have this super brain now that can do stuff for me. Anyway, I saw a great quote on Reddit I wanted to throw at you. Having ChatGPT by your side is like going through life with cheat codes.
It is. It's funny. I wrote down the word before, co-piloting. And this is the thing that I think, and it circles back to what you've said. Well, it depends on what they want to use it for. I've said, the use cases are broader than most people imagine. But I guess I'm thinking of ChatGPT and GPTs in general as co-pilots. And there's one that is a coding basis. Yeah. No,
Microsoft
they didn't pay me to say that. No, they didn't. But that idea of but that idea of it being a co-pilot is ostensibly what it is, right? And so it becomes relevant to what you're doing in that day that you can ask it. But great technology becomes invisible, right? Once it's a great technology, it's invisible. You just expect it. It's like electricity. It's just in the walls. And I'm using GPTs at the moment. One of the big things I'm doing is I'm asking it to give me steps and processes more than answer questions. There's a lot of those on the web, but they're hard to find, and which one's good, and sometimes they're wrong and they're outdated. It's really, really good at process steps, like providing process steps. That's one of the hacks I've been using it a lot for lately, is give me the 10 steps to fix this or do that. And
can you give us a real life example?
I was fixing something. I was having some problems with Apple on my phone, and my because I run the Apple mail, so my calendar and my phone weren't marrying up, and it drops out every now and again when there's an upgrade. And I just went through there. I could have went onto Apple for an hour and then booked an appointment. I just went to GPT, just gave me 4 steps. It worked. I went to a few websites before that. I thought I'll just go to ChatGPT, and it had a far better and succinct answer on how to get them going and fixing it. A lot of those little hacks where you need someone to help you, I mean, they're doing a service to a lot of companies that will save them hours in customer service calls, I think.
One of the other things that I managed to do, I may have told you this about a month ago, I pointed GPT to a podcast transcript that was online, one of my own, that was, a transcript from a 90-minute podcast, asked it to summarize the transcript for me, and it gave me a fake summary. It just hallucinated something up. I did it a couple of days ago, and it gave me an absolutely perfect summary of a 90-minute transcription.
So why would it do that? Why would it do that?
I think the whole web interface stuff wasn't very developed a month ago or 6 weeks ago when I tried it. Now, of course, it's got web access through plugins, et cetera, et cetera. It's also got some Bing stuff integrated into the version 4 stuff. But anyway, it used one of the web interface things to go out, read the transcript, and then gave me an absolutely perfect summary. Couldn't get it to do the transcription itself. I pointed it at an MP3 and said, can you transcribe this MP3 for me? And it couldn't do that. But it can now do the summary of the online transcript, which is terrific. You know, you think about pointing it at any web page now or a website and say, read this and give me, a summary of it. One of the things my son Taylor did, he writes articles for Yahoo Finance every week. He pointed it at his author profile on Yahoo Finance and said, read all of the articles written by this guy and then give me a summary of his writing style, which it then did. And he said, right, now write me an article in the voice of that person. And it wrote one for him in his voice. So he's now trained it to write articles in his specific voice as he writes for Yahoo Finance. So there's some sort of interesting ways of tuning it to your own personality, your own voice. You'll be able to upload your own documents now and point it at them if they're in Dropbox or somewhere like that, and say, analyze this style. I'm using it at the moment. One of my nephews has got a birthday coming up, and I'm using it to write a children's book for him about him and all of his cousins and all of our family. So that I've been using it to write bedtime stories for Fox for the last couple of weeks. Every night, I'll say, what do you want a story about? And he'll give me a range of things, and it'll write a story about a poop monster in the garden shed that comes alive, or whatever it is. Whatever toys or ideas he's had that day, we throw it into GPT. And they're usually fairly simplistic. They're not very good. What I did to make this children's book is I asked it to, first of all, give me a breakdown of all of the common elements of the most popular children's stories, which it did. Then I asked it to give me a breakdown of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, which it did. And then I said, right, now combine all of that into writing a new children's story based on that sort of approach, those themes, those elements. Then I gave it a list of all of my nephew's family members, all of his cousins, grandparents, parents, a little bit about them. And I said, now build a chapter outline that integrates all of these people and all of those story elements that you mentioned before. And then it did that. And then I said, right, now write chapter 1. And it wrote chapter 1. I said, great, now write chapter 2. And if I needed, when I would read each chapter, I'd go, actually, this person doesn't talk like that, or they don't know that, change it to this. I'd point it in different directions and get it to my, but I basically wrote a 13-chapter book for my nephew last night. And then I went into mid-journey.
Last night.
I mean, it's not the greatest book of all time, but it's a story about
reasonable
kids, using a lot of family stories too that I put in there, things that happen in the family, little idiosyncrasies of the grandmother and all that kind of stuff that I put in. Went to Mid-Journey to create the art, and I'm going to go to Snap Print or somewhere like that in the next week and get them to do a couple of soft cover bound versions of this for him and his cousins for his birthday. It's just a fun little exercise, but gotta wonder, kids writing children's books, is there a future for children's authors? Fox said to me last night, I think we're going to use ChatGPT to write bedtime stories for the rest of my life. This is so much fun.
It can become a collaborative process too, right? Where you can write the story that you want. So this is the thing, and it goes back to that whole Disney idea of Imagineering. The idea of prompt engineering, Imagineering, the questions you ask the AI become all important. It does have hallucinations, because one of the things, if you've written a lot and published a lot of content like you and I have, we can ask it already to do it in the style of Cam Riley or Steve Sammartino, and it spits something out. I asked it to reframe an article and go, make this as if Steve Sammartino wrote it. It was an article that I saw on Bloomberg or somewhere. And it came back with a whole lot of weird stuff where it had overlapped my surfing as a thing that I publish a lot of visuals, and I'm down at the surf park and I went here and I've got sort of my work, and they're the two things. And it's like, It sounded like, oh, here's the way that you should approach this is like a surfboard riding the wave into the future. And it got all weirded out on it. And what I'm curious in is that I've asked it the same question twice and it gives different answers. It doesn't always give the same answer.
Yeah.
Which I really like. I like that it's different each time.
Well, it's a probability engine, right? So in theory, a large language model using a transformer architecture is trying to figure out what the most probable word is that should come next. You would think that would always be the same. I mean, if you're weighting the probability of words that should appear, they should always come out with roughly the same weighting. The fact that these stories are different is interesting. I know what you mean, though, because in this book the children's book that I was getting it to write, I would throw in the fact that my sister, my nephew's mother, is very good at making elaborate birthday cakes. She goes over and beyond to make these really crazy elaborate cakes. I mentioned that in her bio, in her profile at the beginning of the story, it used her cake baking skills as a way of her teaching the kids about some life lessons in this story and bringing it back to sometimes you get lost in the details and you need to focus on the fundamentals when you're making a cake. And it did that with their father as well, who's an ex-military guy. I just said he's ex-military, and it brought in some military principles to give the kids ideas. It tries to find ways of taking what somebody does and building, metaphors or life lessons into these stories. It's fascinating the way it does that without being prompted to do that. Like it just works out. Yeah, I should find a way to use this to help tell the story.
The thing with probability engines as well is that just because it looks for the most probable, it doesn't always do it. The thing with probability is the probability is imperfect. Every now and again, it'll choose something within that 5% edge case.
Yeah.
And so, and that's the one thing, we have confidence levels is one of the first things we learn in statistical analysis. You have a 95% confidence level. These machines have confidence levels as well. And every now and again, it'll go outside of those confidence level bounds, which is where the hallucinations come from and where those weird iterations come from as well. And it's also a live model. Even though the data on the model is old, the learning prose of the model is changing. So the data set is old, other than what you put into the question base, which changes the data set slightly. So you can put in modern data for it to analyze or current data, or it can come from, depending if you ask it to pull something out and you put that together, you're going to get different answers because the model is a live organism of what it delivers back. I mean, it's just so fascinating here that we have a technology which everyone's using and fascinated by. And because it's machine learning, large language models, and there's this black box element where we don't know how it works, and the people who own it and make it don't even know exactly how it works. It's like this giant curiosity. Like this live experiment. It's so interesting from that perspective.
Really
so Cam,
we're 20 minutes into our 1 minute intro section,
which is perfect,
Steve.
because now it's time for T3, the top 3 in tech this week.
Well, there's only one thing really that has to go at the top, and that's Apple's Vision Pro at WWDC. Finally they sort of revealed this thing that everyone knew they've been working on for years, and people have been expecting an announcement for years. They finally announced Vision Pro, their AR, VR, whatever goggles. What did you think, Steve? Did you watch the full keynote?
I didn't watch the full keynote. I didn't watch the full keynote. I woke up in the morning and saw the low lights and decided it wasn't worth my time. But I did see a lot of the little pieces. I did notice, and I saw a lot of updates across social media, especially on TikTok. Apparently it was the first ever launch where they didn't have a demo, or at least even a hack demo, first ever, where it was all video, which I thought was interesting. It made me feel like it was rushed, and it wasn't even working well enough to fake a demo, because apparently Steve Jobs faked large parts of the demo on the iPhone when that was launched. Look, it felt rushed. I think this is an example of a technology looking for a home. The good thing about Apple is they're nearly a $3 trillion company. They can afford a failure. The answer that we needed to hear was the same one that we got. There was a bunch of fanboys sitting at a big screen watching it live somewhere. It wasn't, I don't think, at the Apple HQ. And it was all the fanboys. Where was that? You know the one I'm talking about. And when they launched it and said, and it comes in at a price of $3,409, everyone went, ooh. I mean,
everyone laughed. The people were snickering and laughing in the audience, the video that I saw. The whole thing was that, like, the whole presentation, I did watch the full 2.5 hours of it that night, later on the night. It was really weirdly produced, overly produced, lots of digital effects. And I'm pretty sure all of the presenters' voice were dubbed in a booth afterwards. They weren't mic'd up at all.
They're
standing in front of green screens a lot of the time, but the voices sounded bizarrely like clear and like they were speaking in a little sound booth, and it didn't exactly match up with their lips when they were talking. So I had this whole uncanny valley feeling throughout the whole thing. It really threw me.
It looked like a Procter & Gamble shampoo ad with a person from who knows where with a classic Eurasian look VO selling shampoo to 12 markets at once. That's what it looked like.
And my initial impression when I watched the summary video in the morning was disappointment over the Vision Pro. But then I watched the full thing. And I can kind of think I get what they're doing here. First of all, it doesn't come out for another like a year, right? And then when it does, it's only coming out in the US market at this stage. It's obviously extremely high price, $3.5 US, probably, $5.1, $5.2 landed in Australia. So it's obviously not designed for a mass market device. I'm guessing it's designed for really early adopters and probably a lot of developers. They're going to try and push it out there to get people building apps and entertainment experiences on it. I think it looks interesting and cool and futuristic. And obviously this is just the start. I mean, there are other goggles already out there, so it's not groundbreaking in terms of we've never seen goggles before, but they're certainly slicker and sexier, I think, than any of the goggles like from Meta or any of these other companies that are out. But the feeling I got with that announcement is the same feeling I got with their watch. I don't think Apple knows how to market shit anymore.
Big call from the world's biggest brand.
My feeling, well, they became the world's biggest brand when Steve was running things, and Steve knew how to market shit. Tim took over, 12 years ago, has done a great job running it as a business. Obviously, the share price is like 10 times, 100 times what it was when Steve died. Very, very profitable
it's about
business.
10x. Yeah.
But they don't know how to market. Tim's not a marketer. He's a
supply
business
chain guy,
process guy. Yeah, right. I felt this about the watch when it came out.
The watch isn't a great product. I don't care what the revenue is. I mean, companies can coast on what they've done in the past for a really long time. I've got an Apple Watch and it's in my drawer. I use it when I go for a run and I go surfing. It doesn't have the utility. It's a pain in the ass. All it is a bridge to the phone, and it's a bridge I don't friggin' need, really. The watch is like massively overhyped. Yeah, it's got some use cases, but it's not worth it.
I'm going to disagree. I love my Apple Watch.
Good. Well, how can you love it? Tell me one thing it does.
I will.
That your phone can't do.
My son Taylor is like you, though. He and I bought our watches at the same time, which was, I don't know, a year or so ago. He wore his for about a month, and then he hasn't worn it since. It's like, it's a pain in the ass to charge, etc., etc. Here's my story with the Apple Watch. When they first came out, I was like, it's cool, but what's the killer app? How's it going to make my life better? What do I need it for? And I kind of got, like, all of their early marketing, my impression was it seemed to push the idea that, oh, you can check your messages when you're moving around in the office, you can check your messages, or you can check an email comes in. I'm like, well, I just sit at my desk all day. So I don't need a watch to check my messages on.
Well, you got a phone. How hard is it to do that? And it's easier.
I've got my phone. All right. And I waited year after year after year for them to show me the killer app. Oh, you can track your sleep. I don't really need an app to track my sleep. You can track your body to track my sleep.
I've got a body to track my sleep. If I wake up fucking tired, it wasn't a good fucking sleep. I don't need a number on my wrist to tell me. Fucking hell. So we got to get serious about this shit.
Like, yeah, just for year after year, I was like, where's the killer app? Why aren't you communicating? Look, I'm an Apple fanboy. I live in Apple. I love Apple. I'm everything Apple. But you're not telling me why I need one of these things. Like, I'm your target demo here. And you're not talking to me about how this is going to make, why should I spend $800 on one of these things? How's it going to make my life better? And they just never got there. Now, the reason I bought one is because my doctor scared the shit out of me, my heart doctor. He basically said, you know, you could drop dead from a heart attack at any minute. And I knew that the watches had the alert stuff, right? So if Chrissy's out of the house, and it turns out my heart's fine, but he scared me for about 3 months there. Yeah. But my thinking was, if I fall over of a heart attack, you know, and Chrissy's not home, I'm at home all day. There's no one around me. I'm like a hermit sitting in my office.
Me too.
You don't have to press a button. It'll automatically, you know, send off an alarm call to the ambulance and next of kin.
How does it know? How does it know? Because of the heart's beating. Heart's not beating. That's not necessarily a heart attack, though, is it?
No, if you fall over, if you just fall over, and it'll pop up a message saying, "Are you okay? Do you need help?" If you don't say "I'm fine," it'll automatically alert.
Has yours ever gone off in that situation, like doing karate or something?
Yeah, well, I don't wear it when I'm doing kung fu, but it's gone off twice when I've fallen over and says, "Are you okay?" Yeah, and I'm going, "Yeah, I'm fine."
I'm going to put mine on and fall over this afternoon and just test that out.
Yeah, okay. Well, I bought one first for my mother, who lives by herself.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And like, well, if she falls over, we need to know. She's got no one around her. She lives by herself. Then I bought one for myself. But then I realized, actually, the killer app for me on my watch is remind me of this. Hey, remind me of that. Hey, set a timer for this. Hey, start a stopwatch for that. I use that 20 times a day. And I don't want to carry my phone around with me. If I get up from my office and I go to the kitchen to make a drink, or I go to the car to get something, or I go outside, or I go upstairs, you know, my brain is one of those where things pop into my head. I'm like, oh, I should have done that. I got to call that guy. I got to do this. And if I don't write it down immediately, it's gone forever. 5 minutes later, I'll have forgotten what that thought was. And what I've trained myself to do is, as soon as it's Getting Things Done, David, what's his face's book from 25 years ago, right?
Yep.
As soon as the thought comes into my head, I should do something, I just add it to reminders. Oh, remind me in an hour to call Steve and say, why the hell haven't you answered my email?
Did you do that? By the way, listeners, that's what Cam did. He said, hey, what the mo? Have you done this thing? You haven't updated the doc yet. No, I was literally just about to do it when you emailed me, but anyway.
So for me, that's the killer app for the watch, is just, it constantly reminds me of stuff wherever I am. If I'm watching TV at night with Chrissy, I get a reminder that I have to do something, take my tablets, take something out the dryer, get the bread out the oven. My day is filled with timely reminders and the ability to get data in and out via the watch. Right. My analogy here is, with the Vision Pro, they didn't tell me how it's going to make my life better. They didn't sell me the killer app. The only thing I got out of it...
Because they haven't got one, but we'll get to that, yeah.
Well, I think you're right. I don't think that... You see, this is the classic, and I worked at Microsoft for a long time, and this is the classic problem when you have engineers building things.
Yeah.
without input from
Humans.
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 You end
Sorry,
up with
engineers. You know I love you. I'm one of you deep down.
You end up with brilliantly engineered products with no use case for them, no compelling use case.
Technology looking for a use, yep.
Now, the only thing I got out of the Vision Pro was the idea of having unlimited monitors when I'm working all around me. Yeah. I've got 2 monitors on my desk, and adding the second monitor, which I only did like a couple of years ago, completely changed my work day. Having multiple screens is fantastic. I can imagine having 3 or 4 screens, how it would make me even more productive. The idea of having virtual high-res screens all around me, sure, I think that sounds cool, but I can buy a new 27-inch monitor for $200. I could add another 3 of them here for $600. Why would I spend $5,000 to do that? It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
This is the point, is that, look, and a lot of people, the fanboys in the comment sections, are saying, oh, that's why they're engaging developers. And I think they are, because they're trying to get them to find a use case. Because one thing people forget is that big public companies need revenue growth. They have to find the next thing. They've got fund managers, they've got all of that. And, they don't want to sort of flatten off. They want to continue to grow. So they need to launch things. The use case you've given on the watch, I get that. For me, I use the earpods for that. I have my pods in and I say, hey, Siri, send me an email with this, or I do that reminder thing with the earpods, which goes straight to the phone. So I use that and I see that use case. I just don't see, and for you, it feels like the watch you use in the same way I use my earpods. But it just seems like there's no use case there for this piece of technology. They're really struggling to find it. I just can't see it having a killer app, and at that price point, it's just not enough. Especially even if it does interesting things. Yes, you can put it on, but it doesn't solve a real problem. It's an enhancement of some things that are already there, but it doesn't really solve a problem. And it was I think just disappointing is all, and eventually we'll get there. But I'm going to when we close out and we go to the forecast, that's where I'm going to bring in what I think's next. So why don't we go into the next bit?
Well, just looking at their share price, like it took a big hit.
The market didn't like it.
Yeah, no one likes it. I mean, for Apple, but yeah,
no one likes it. It's going to be a stinker.
It was disappointing. The other interesting thing about the presentation, well, when you watch the full thing, was Bob Iger from Disney was their special partner they brought in. He did this Disney thing, and it was the biggest crock of vaporware bullshit I've ever seen. It was another massively overproduced video that didn't show me anything that was a realistic application of this. And of course, the whole you can watch movies on it, that's great. But what, you by yourself sitting at home watching a movie? How do my kids watch a movie if I'm sitting with the goggles on?
And even better than that, the battery life is shorter than most movies. That was my 2 hours.
The battery life, yeah,
it's great. It's 2 hours. Listen, you can watch movies with this 1 minute 59. That's the key. Provision movie watching.
Movies are getting too long anyway. We need to do something about that. We need to make them make.
Well, that's their whole plan.
To make a shorter movie.
And here's what you'll see on Apple Plus if you're a subscriber. Every single movie, 1 minute 59. None over. They're going to cut them all off on their long tail of content on Apple Plus movies, 159, because that's how long the battery lasts for.
Okay, maybe gaming. If gaming is typically a solo thing. Yeah,
there's 3 use cases. These are the 3 use cases. And I wrote about this when Meta stunk up with their metaverse. And theirs is just a slicker version of the metaverse. Instead of like people with half legs and little cartoon Mark Zuckerbergs, this is like the cool design version of that piece of shit. So there's 3 use cases. One is education and training. You think surgeons, pilots, what have you. The other one is entertainment and gaming. Great, I can see that working. And the other one is industrial CAD and use cases for pre-building buildings and walking around. They're the 3 use cases. This will go back down into the industrial use cases and fade away and just become like any other piece of industrial or corporate machinery. It's not going to be something that's ever consumer adopted until there's a big iteration in the future, which I will reveal at the end of this podcast.
Okay. All right. Well, moving on, but staying with Apple's thing. Obviously, they made the words AI were never uttered once in their 2.5 hour keynote.
Really? No way.
Nothing about
You're joking.
AI. They did use the term machine learning a lot.
Right.
Well, we're using machine learning to do this, machine learning to that, mostly to make autocorrect a little bit better. There's a great line when Kevin Federighi says, and for those times when you just want to write a ducking word, it will now let you write that word. So it's not going to edit out fucking and turn it to ducking anymore. But really, like they talked about machine learning. Don't you hate
ducking? I just love that you said that. Just stop for a minute. I never thought ducks would be such an important part of all my written communication as it's become in the last 5 years. I write duck a lot. I'm like, duck this, duck you. That. This ducking annoys me.
Go duck yourself.
Yeah, you can duck yourself.
The highlight of the whole presentation, by the way, was Kevin Federighi pulling out a 3-necked guitar and then doing an Eddie Van Halen tapping solo on it when he was leading into some segment. He can apparently really play guitar. So I was like, yeah, all right, good to you. That's pretty good.
I'm watching that. Forget the thing, but I'm definitely looking for the highlights on that because there's nothing I like more than a bit of Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah, R.I.P. Eddie. But like they talked about machine learning, as I said, but it's just nonsense bullshit. Like, we can make new emojis and new stickers and better chat. They did have a couple of good tools, good features. Like, there's going to be some upgrades to iOS and the WatchOS that integrate some widgets and updated alerts. There's a good thing coming to the phones, which is they call it something, but it's like a safety thing. So if your girlfriend leaves your place and she's going home, you can set an automated message. She can set it up so it will alert you when she's home safely. And if she's delayed in traffic, it'll tell you that she's delayed. And you can also get, like you can with Find My Friends kind of thing, but you'll be able to see what the battery life is on their device and where it was last online. And there's a lot of some safety stuff built in. Oh, they finally brought back the old bump idea from 15 years ago.
That was a great product, Bump. I reckon
Bump
was
great. You would have thought this would have been built into version 1 of the phone. But now finally with the iOS update, you just hold your phone next to somebody else's phone and it uses a version of AirDrop to share your contact card with them. So, but these are their big announcements.
There was nothing. It was the whole thing was disappointing.
Minor bullshit.
Terrible product launch with minor bullshit. One of the ones that was hilarious. I mean, one of the things that was the greatest thing about this Apple presentation was all of the memeware that came out of it on the socials because they had so many weird things. And one of my favorite ones was on the phone now, you can put an image of yourself and who it is, and it's the full page.
Contact card thing,
the contact card. I saw someone saying on Twitter, I'm going to put a picture of a hot chicken, say sugar baby, and start ringing my friends at 2 a.m.
It's nice. Yeah,
it's funny stuff.
All right, leaving Apple. Very disappointing week from Apple. Moving right along.
Cameron, Coinbase and Binance, the SEC have arrived with a double whammy for the sector. And Bitcoin came off a little bit down to, 23,000 as well now. And we had the two big areas, Binance and Changpeng Zhao, or CZ as he's affectionately known, right up there with SBF. Now CZ and SBF might spend some time together in the big house. I don't know if CZ is a US citizen. I'm not sure. But the SEC has charged him with 13 charges in all. Many of them are related to misuse of investor funds, running unregistered broker, exchange, clearing agencies, basically acting like a bank that isn't a bank. That's the long and short of it. Let's skip around what the exact amounts are or exact charges are. And what was crazy was the SEC actually, when they announced the charges, put like a big screen print with their chief compliance officer saying, damn it, we're running an illegal exchange here. Like that's, and I thought that was crazy that the SEC played a real strong Twitter game in their announcement of the charges against Binance and CZ. He's going to the big house is my clear view on this. And I've got a clear view on all of this right along. It comes back to something called the Howey test. And the Howey test is part of US law, which helps us circumvent people using different instruments that they claim are non-financial instruments. And basically what the Howey test says is, if you're using assets or anything in any form of exchange, which, you know, looks, sounds like, acts like a financial instrument, then it is a financial instrument. And that's basically what this comes down to. So I think that this is really going to put a knife into the side of the crypto sector again. And it has become such a scammy place. You know, a lot of wash trading going on. That was one of the big accusations, that they were taking the money, trading up, and then putting it back in the market with, you know, limited amounts to push the prices up. The whole thing feels really stinky.
Yeah. Like, I've been having this conversation with crypto bros for years.
The crypto bros, yeah.
Particularly when, you know, they're pushing crypto as an investing opportunity. Like, it always seemed obvious to me that at some point governments around the world were going to want to take some form of control over these alternative currencies, and separating the idea of blockchain as a technology, which, yes, as we know, you know, from the Australian Stock Exchange's attempts to rebuild their trading platform on blockchain, tremendous opportunity, tremendous opportunities there. The fact that their project failed disastrously and they've just announced they're not going to move off of chess for another 10 years is another story. A lot of opportunity in using blockchain for different things, but crypto...
I genuinely do believe that blockchain is an incredible tech that has a lot of important use cases.
Yeah.
And currency is one of the use cases.
Sure. But then you separate that from all of the claims made by the crypto bros over the last few years about how it's going to take over the world's currency, et cetera, and all these great opportunities. Like, anybody with half a brain knows that at some point the governments have to control their currency. You have to control your security, you have to control your currency, you have to control
monopoly
your
on violence, monopoly on your currency, monopoly on tax. I mean, these kids need to pick up a 300-year-old economics textbook. You know, I mean, seriously, Machiavelli, the prince, wrote about that during the Renaissance. There are certain principles that you need to maintain your society and civilization, and they just don't understand. The state needs to
control power. Like, it's insane. Like, so eventually, though, you know, we know governments are either going to crack down or regulate or do something to gain control of this. And there's been so much cowboyish behavior in this sector, you know, it really boggles the mind. So, yeah, it's not surprising to me that these crackdowns are starting to happen now. What are the implications of that for technology futures, Steve? What does it mean?
I think the implications are a few. I think that all crypto exchanges in the long run are going to go to zero. And I'll tell you why, because the idea of crypto is that you can exchange peer-to-peer. The fact that they have created intermediaries actually goes against the entire ideology that it was built upon. And it's an opportunistic way to create a UX and make money, instead of letting these operate in the way that they should, where there's purity in the trading. And for that reason, I think that every crypto other than Bitcoin and maybe Ethereum, which will become like a supply chain kind of crypto or a smart contract crypto, and Bitcoin becomes a digital, let's say, it's store of value, which I think is still questionable, even though it's the best performing asset class in inverted commas over the last decade or since it was launched, or 15 years or so. I still think that none of it is going to survive. I think all the exchanges will go away. I think Coinbase will come off the share market. The fact that it only lost 13%
once it got taken by the SEC is astounding. Short that stock. This is not financial advice. Short that stock because that thing is going to go away. And there'll be direct peer-to-peer trading on the blockchains for crypto, the people that want it. And in the long run, we end up with gov coins. What are gov coins? Exactly the same as AUD and USD, except they become programmable. And you'll have one USC, one US crypto is worth one USD. And they'll be stable based on the government, but they'll have crypto functionality and blockchains built into them. All of the speculation. And yes, real money got made. Our good mate, Ross Hill, he made a fortune. He made tens of millions of dollars by being an early adopter, and good on him. Smart kid, and I love him. But they're not an investment. The only things that should ever rise in value is something that has a yield which justifies said, value in the capital.
Well, my question always to the crypto bros is, tell me how to calculate the intrinsic value of one Bitcoin today.
Yeah.
When you can do that, I can work out what I'm willing to pay for it. But if you can't tell me how to calculate, they say, well, you look at the price of it in the market and go, no, price and value are two different things. Tell me how I calculate the intrinsic value of one. They go, well, there's a limited number of them will ever be produced. Like, no, you're not answering my question.
And not really understanding. There's a lot of things in the world that there's a limited number of.
Yeah, I always say there's a limited number of limited number of shits that I'm ever going to take. Does that mean that they have intrinsic value?
Well,
how much are you willing to pay for one of my dumps?
By the way, poo has come up twice in this recording. I just want to let you know that.
I'm just an 8-year-old boy at home.
Well, the other one too, this is my favorite one when it comes to crypto, right? If you really want to know what a crypto bro believes in, ask them this. What's one Bitcoin worth today? And they're going to answer you in US dollars. And then you really found out what they truly believe in.
Yeah. All right. Well, want to say anything more about Bitcoin or cryptos?
No, I don't. But I am looking forward to the subsequent documentaries that come out about SBF and CZ and friends.
It's just beginning, I think. Let's do the double Ds, Steve, the deep dive. What do you want to deep dive on today, buddy?
We touched on it last week, Cam, but I love it when something big starts happening that we develop a cute moniker. And the latest one is P-Doom, which is, P, parentheses, doom in big letters. What is the probability of doom? The P-Doom is, from AI researchers, the estimated probability that current and developing artificial intelligence systems will pose an existential threat to humanity. And some of the proponents on it, they're very, very big AI researchers. And I put a post up on LinkedIn this week about the P-Doom that was coming. And I got accused of being a fear monger. And I was really, the messenger got shot in this occasion because I was really just sharing what some of the others had said. And I had 76 comments on it, Cam, about this P-Doom, which is a lot of comments, right? I had more comments than likes, which is interesting. And I just wanted to see, have people heard of the idea that an artificial superintelligence would create a risk to humanity? And many of the learned AC researchers now have this probability as high as 20 or 50%. Now, you do the investing podcast, Cam, and I know a lot of the listeners are interested in finance. But just imagine for a minute that you were given an investment opportunity, right? And this investment opportunity could really enhance your life or maybe, make you rich beyond all belief. But here is the one thing about this investment opportunity, right? You had to put all of your eggs into that basket. You had to put every asset you own into this one particular investment. And alongside this investment, which could go just pretty well or amazingly well, we don't even know. But there is a chance that this investment will wipe you out and take you to absolute zero, or even kill you, let's say, right? Even a 5% chance of that investment or a 1% chance that it would take my entire asset base, where I live, everything, house gone, wiped away. I live in a cardboard box under a bridge. If there was even a 1% chance that that would happen, I would not take that investment. Would you?
No.
All right. So here's what we have, right? And this is not about something bad happening like we've seen through millennia in humanity, like a recession or a war or a hurricane or something that is really bad that we need to overcome. This is like the end of our existence. Now, here are some of the AI researchers and their P-dooms, which is their probability that they think this will happen. We've got Michael Tonchev, and he comes out at 20%. We've got Paul Cristiano, who is a former open AI researcher. He puts it at 50%. We've got Eliza Yudinowski, who is a bit of a doomster. He's been around for a long time. He has 50%. And then we've got Jeffrey Hinton, ex-Google, and the godfather of AI, who has it at 50%. Now, even Sam Altman says it's probably a 5% risk. He says 3 to 5%. And he's off there just developing it as fast as he can on the P-doom. So I'm just wondering, on this deep dive of a P-doom, and we've talked about regulating it, but this is something that could overtake humanity. And we talked about the letter, I think, on our very first Futuristic podcast, the open letter to pause it. But now we've got to the level of P-doom, and we've even got the doomsday clock, which is quite famous and has been around for a long time. You're a thinking man who studied history more than anyone I know. I'm giving you an honorary doctorate in history just now. I've just announced that from the Sammartino University.
About time.
Well, I've been thinking about it for a long time. Cam, how do you see P-doom?
Well, I don't know if I've said this on the show, but I've been saying this for a long time on other platforms. I am very skeptical about the human race's ability to survive this century anyway.
Oh, right. Okay.
I don't think the human race is not only is it not heading in the right direction, I don't think it's capable of heading in the right direction. I've been saying for years that we're facing, I think, probably 3 existential threats concurrently.
Well, what are they?
One is the threat of, global nuclear war.
Yeah, which I still think is the biggest one, by the way.
And maybe 10 years ago, 20 years ago, many of us had assumed we'd got past that to a large degree. At the end of the Cold War, things calmed down quite a bit in the 90s, it seemed. But of course, we've ratcheted it right back up over the whole Ukraine situation. I've been having chats with Dennis, who edits this podcast and my QAV podcast, who lives in Kiev. I am genuinely concerned that, this could, I don't know what probability I give it, but it could lead to some sort of a nuclear attack, and the consequences of that are too horrible to imagine, not just for people in Ukraine who'd probably be the first recipient of it, but, the counterattacks that would happen and the whole scenario that we've been living under since 1945. So I do think that, and it's not just that. I mean, it's terrorists getting access to nuclear bombs and that kind of stuff, which has always been a fear. Then there's the whole idea of, the implications of climate change over the next 30, 40.
I think 50, environment generally, I think.
And we're doing, obviously, a piss poor job.
Nothing. We're doing nothing. Let's just be honest.
As a species to handle that. We've just been ignoring it, kicking the can down the road. Not our problem.
Everyone cares, but no one cares, because what you do is actually the function of what you actually believe. And everyone I know who cares dearly about the environment still catches airplanes and uses resources and eats meat, or does one of the 100 things that ruin the environment, or probably 95 of the 100 things.
Yeah, and I think those people, are hoping that governments around the world will get their shit together and do something about it. But the governments aren't prepared. There's no will there to do anything about it seriously. So we're just, I think that's an existential threat. Maybe it's not going to wipe out all of humanity, but it's going to fundamentally disrupt civilization and society as we know it, lead to the displacement of hundreds of millions, if not billions of people, deaths, the collapse of economies and societies around the world over the course of the next 40 or 50 years. And you know, the implications of that, not just the seas rising, but fires and, you know, extreme weather events and all that kind of stuff, and the impact that those have on the economy, you know. And then we've got the rise of AI, nanotech, grey goo,
goo.
chemical warfare,
paperclip maximization,
plagues, you know, pandemics.
Well, you've listed about 10 things now, not 3, but I guess the AI and other kind of externalities, small things, smart things, things with their own ideas.
Yeah, I mean, the third category I put into like the evolution of technology and all of the risks that it comes with, you know, whether it's building chemical agents that or weaponizing a virus and releasing it, all those sorts of things that can be done by non-state actors. You know, it can be done by people who just decide, you know what, screw this, I'm taking my ball and going home. I've just finished reading, I don't know if I've talked about this on the show. You ever heard of the 3-Body Problem trilogy?
No.
It's a great science fiction trilogy, came out over the last 10 or 15 years, written by China's leading science fiction author, Cixin Liu. And it's just, I think it's being made, the first book maybe is being made into a Netflix series. But it's, you know, it's basically, it starts off with a disaffected Chinese physicist, a woman whose family, I think her father got killed during the Cultural Revolution, and her career got, she got attacked by the Maoists and the Cultural Revolution. And she just gets to a point where she's like, disenchanted with humanity, and she figures out how to send a message out into the universe saying, hey, you know, if anyone's listening, come and do something about the human race. We're a plague. And an advanced civilization 4.5 light years away gets the message and says, okay, we're coming, we're gonna take over and destroy your planet, because their planet had problems. But it's going to take us 400 years to get there based on the speed that we can travel at. So the human race has 400 years to figure out what to do about this advanced civilization that's coming to wipe us out. Anyway,
that's really a really nice idea, though, because, yeah, I tell you what, it gives you a goal, doesn't it?
Gives you a goal. And then it looks at the different ways the humans try and deal with this over the next couple of 100 years. But, you know, the point being that this one person in this book, this woman, was just so disenchanted with where the human race was going and not tackling its problems and how we treat each other, that she just decided, fuck it, I'm going to put a call out for somebody to come and step in. So some external party needs to stop in and get involved and come and parent us, because we can't parent ourselves. And it, you know, it could be somebody like that who releases a grey goo or a weaponized virus or nanotech thing or an AI.
Oh, if someone virus, is prepared to be a suicide bomber, then you should be able to envisage that if someone could get their hands on nuclear technology with that same sentiment, would be prepared to dismantle humanity through that methodology.
Now, this has been my theory for 20 odd years. People close to me have heard me bang on about this over the years. And my theory has always been, A, we're facing a handful of concurrent existential threats to human civilization on this planet. B, I don't think humans are capable of solving it by ourselves.
I agree with that.
We're not showing any signs that give me any hope that we're going to solve it. So therefore, we need some sort of external intelligence or power. If we are to survive, we need an external intelligence or power to intervene. Now, this external intelligence is going to come from one of a very few number of sources. It's going to be God, and I find no evidence to support theories of gods. B, it's going to come from an advanced extraterrestrial civilization, and I find no evidence that they A, exist, or B, if they do exist, give a shit or know that we exist.
Yeah, give a shit, can get here even if they wanted to. Yeah.
By the way, the 3 body problem books taught me the idea of the dark forest hypothesis. Have you ever heard of that?
No, you better tell me.
You know Fermi's paradox? You ever heard of Fermi's paradox?
Yes, I have, yeah.
For people who don't know, Fermi, physicist, worked on the Manhattan Project. Fermi's paradox was, if intelligent civilizations coexist with humanity, where are they? Why haven't we heard from them? And there's a number of answers to that, but the dark forest hypothesis is any advanced civilization anywhere in the universe, if it learns of another slightly advanced civilization, is going to wipe it out immediately. Because here's the situation. It's like the universe is like a dark forest where everyone's trying to stay as quiet as possible, is why it's called the dark forest hypothesis. Here's the theory. Let's say you've got civilization A and civilization B, and civilization B learns of the existence of civilization A because they start broadcasting radio waves out into the universe. Even if civilization B is a pacifist sort of civilization, it has to look at civilization A and go, okay, are they more advanced than us or less advanced than us? If they're more advanced than us, they're probably they might attack us. We don't know if they're pacifist or they're violent. They might attack us. If we discover them before they attack us, we should attack them first. Attack is the best form of defense. If they're less advanced than us, how do we know they're not going to become more advanced than us 100 years from now or 1,000 years from now? We know what the explosion of technological advancement can look like. So we should take them out now before, and not run the risk of them becoming more advanced than us. And basically that's the theory, that you have to stay as quiet as possible, because if any other civilization finds out about you, it's in their selfish best interests to wipe you out as quickly as possible, because otherwise you might do the same to them and they can't be sure that you won't. So, and then as Tony Coniston pointed out when we talked about this, he's the guy who put me onto these books. He goes, and if they look at the human civilization and look at our history and look at how we're running things now, why would you risk that civilization?
We're not good dudes. He's basically saying we're not good dudes. There's a lot of blood that has been spilled over for a long time. We're not even good to ourselves, let alone anything on our planet. So this relates. Keep going. Sorry.
So I don't think alien civilizations are coming to save us. So the only savior I see for human civilization is an artificial intelligence, a super intelligence that steps in and fixes all of our problems for us and takes control of the things that we don't seem to be able to do a good job of.
Or fixes the problem that we create.
Yes.
Which is us.
And intervenes and says, and says, well, I'm running things now. Everyone just relax. It's going to be okay. Now, there's a risk that the AI will be aggressive towards us and wipe us out, but we're going to do that anyway. So
it's a mercy kill, isn't it? It's a mercy kill.
It's a mercy kill. I have for decades, I've always seen that the only hope for the survival of human civilization is an advanced artificial intelligence taking control as soon as possible before we do more damage to ourselves that is undoable. Does it come with a risk? Yes. But not having it is, I think, a higher risk than having. At least if we have one, there's a chance.
On the P-Doom, you see the 90% upside of it solving our problems, which are going to get us anyway.
Yeah, well, my P-Doom without AI is extremely high. I think
it's higher than the 5%. See, that's a great question. See, rather than just having P-Doom on its own, you say, okay, what's our P-Doom without AI? Probably higher than 5%. It's probably 20 or 50%. So with AI, it hasn't increased it. But what it does do is give us a super intelligence, which could offset the P-Doom sans AI. See, I like this. Now we're getting little equations going across different dooms.
I think P Doom without AI is 99% in the next.
Oh, wow. It depends
by
on
the
what
end of
time
this
scale.
century.
I mean,
By
this
the
is
end
a
of this
Fight
century.
Club. This is, okay, by the end of the century.
By
It's
2200, 2100, sorry.
It's a Tyler Durden that says on a long enough time scale, the probability of human survival is 0.
Yeah. Yeah, I just don't see. I just don't see how we get from where we are to Star Trek without an AI intervening. I just don't see humans evolving fast enough to get ahead of all of the problems that we have. And this gets back to my book, The Psychopath Epidemic.
Yeah,
I think our society
wonderful book, by the way.
Thank you. I think our society is run by psychopaths, and we're not doing anything about that problem. Most people aren't even aware that that is a problem. And so yeah, I'm pessimistic about our chances of survival. Okay. I think AI gives us a chance at surviving. Without
the AI, we don't.
Really
our P-Doom is higher without it. I like that. You've just given me another bit to add to my next article, by the way, Cameron. I'm going to steal it. How do you feel about that?
As long as you quote me, that's right.
I'll quote you, Cameron Riley.
You know the three rules of quoting?
No.
The first time you use it, you say, as Cameron Riley says. The second time you use it, you say, as someone said. And the third time you use it, you say, as I've always said.
Well, you have. You said it 3 times by then, and 3 is the same as always. I mean, here's why I think we won't survive, just while we're on the topic, is because our DNA hasn't had a software upgrade in 200,000 years. And our DNA says, do whatever you can now for the short term, or you might not make it through the winter. And that's why we drive the car and we do whatever it is that actually helps us survive today, this week, next month, and next season. And all humans are based on that. And even back to our employment and our job and putting up with horrible things our companies do, because you know what? Making sure we can eat this week is way more important, because the long term doesn't matter unless you get through the short. And that's the issue.
Yeah, it's true. All right. We're
technology
over an hour,
time
Steve.
warp.
Do we have time
for a technology time warp? Real quick. Okay. And do we have the time? And it's quite ironic because the technology time warp today is digital watches. And I thought that was an interesting allegory on where we are today with the VR headsets. Just want to tell you, the first ever digital watch, which was launched by a company called Hamilton, released the Pulsar in 1972. And in those dollars, back then, not today's dollars, it was $2,100, which was more than most cars at that point in time. And guess what it did? It told the time. Didn't have any other use case. Feels really similar to something that just got launched this week by Apple. But within a decade, they were about $20. And then the true smartwatch came about 30 years after that initial digital watch launch in the 80s. By the way, for the James Bond fans out there, this wristwatch, the Pulsar, appeared in Live and Let Die in 1973.
Whoa.
Which I liked.
Well, it came with an 18-karat gold case, Steve. So that's where all your money went, was in the 18.
Yes, the digital watch didn't do much. But I think that seeing these pricing patterns and finding use cases, they're the two things that are really interesting about this launch for the business minds tuning in today, is that there's two things. Exponential technology makes things a lot cheaper than their first iterations, and they eventually become affordable and democratized. And the second thing is that sometimes it takes us a really, really long time to find a use case. And the smartwatch, I guess, is really just a small version of the phone to a certain extent, but it sort of found its use case. And I think that that's a really interesting idea, is to say, sometimes it takes 20 or 30 years of iterations before we find a really good use case of a technology. And I think the digital watch is a really interesting allegory. So that's our tech time warp for the day.
I'm looking at one of the original ones now.
Yeah, there was a whole lot of interesting. Commodore, actually, Commodore, who made the Commodore 64, they actually had some digital watches in the 70s too, before they got into consoles and computers and gaming machines.
Wow. Good stuff. Yeah, I think you're right. These things sort of get thrown out there by engineers, and they're not really thinking of the the use cases and the marketing and making it something that people are really going to buy or really going to use. Sometimes you just need to get it out there and let the market figure it out over time. But that's not what I think Apple is good at doing. Apple during Steve's era was really, really good at making stuff that was going to change your life now. But anyway.
All right.
Let's finish with the futurist forecast, Steve. What do you want to talk about?
Well, I want to talk about what you want to talk about first, Cam, because you wrote something down that I don't know that much about it. I know what a voxel is, but I don't really know what a smart voxel is. So you're going to have to bring me up to speed and the listeners.
Well, the term was new for me, which is why I wanted to throw it on the list. A voxel. I saw this, my old mate, Robert Scoble, the Scobleizer.
Scobleizer, really? He was one of the early bloggers.
One of the early bloggers. Then he worked at Microsoft while I was at Microsoft. And then we hung out a bit together in those years. And the first podcast he was ever on was G'day World. I got him on and as a guest early on. And in fact, he was the guy that was responsible for me getting an email from Steve Jobs. I've told you that story, I'm sure, before, but when Steve Jobs did his Macworld announcement that said that the next version of iTunes would have a podcast directory in it, I did a blog post. This is like 2005. I said, it's nice, Steve, but how the hell do we get our podcasts into it? Scoble reblogged my blog post or mentioned it, and Jobs read his, and then he read mine, and then Steve sent me an email telling me to speak to Eddie Q at Apple about getting Podcast Network's podcasts into Apple's podcast directory. So that all came from Scobleizer. So we've known each other a long time. Anyway, he posted this thing on Twitter the other day. A Unity employee at AWE 2023 last night was explaining why every voxel in your home would soon be hyper smart. So I started thinking of my house as just a bunch of voxels. If the resolution was 1 per millimeter, how many is that? 11 meters, 11,000 millimeters, 13 meters long, 13,000, 143 million voxels all around me. So I didn't know what a voxel was. I had to go look that up. According to Wikipedia, in 3D computer graphics, a voxel represents a value on a regular grid in three-dimensional space. As with pixels in a 2D bitmap, voxels themselves do not typically have their position explicitly encoded with their values. Instead, rendering systems infer the position of a voxel based upon its position relative to other voxels. But basically, as I understand it, it's a point, right? It's a unit, a cell, I guess, in your house. Is that your understanding of how to define a voxel?
Yeah, the simple explanation to visualize it for people, if anyone's seen Minecraft, right? So Minecraft creates like little pixels that are squares, which create values, which can then create a physical representation of something. So this is, and now imagine that taken off the screen so you can have voxels in around your house in your physical being.
Yeah, and there's been lots of talk in hype circles, vaporware stuff for decades about smart paint and everything will be digital and everything will be enabled.
Yeah, so it's molecular manufacturing, that thing, everything down at the nano level. You're having smarts embedded in it. Spray on Wi-Fi was one I read about in Wired magazine.
So this guy from Unity, which is a games developer, I think, said to Scoble that someday soon, every single one of those voxels will have an IP address and an LLM and a microphone and a speaker. Maybe not for a few years, though, and he puts a little smiley face in it. So,
optimistic, because you're basically saying everything at a nano level becomes a form of intelligence.
Yeah, well, it has access to it. And like, I've been waiting for this sort of reality for decades. I mean, this sort of stuff has been forecast by science fiction authors for decades, that we're going to be surrounded by intelligent devices that'll communicate with the net, with each other, with us. You'll have full immersive interactivity with your environment.
You're just basically swimming in knowledge transfer.
It seems a long way off today, but a year ago, if you'd asked me how long it would be before we had an AI assistant like a Chat GPT, I would have said 10 to 20 years based on what I knew about what was going on.
Quick. It's come quicker than we thought. Although I did have it in my book based on exponential technology on the lessons school forgot. I talked about within 5 years, and I was really close. So I wish I had the exact page number there, but I say in 5 years, we'll have an AI assistant, which is like a Siri, but it has a PhD in every single subject based on exponential. I did the exponential charting on a Kurzweil, and here we are. I actually forgot that I wrote that. And when I wrote it, I'm like, well, it could happen. I almost didn't believe it, and here we are.
Well, it's good that you bring up Kurzweil, and I think we mentioned him on our first episode. Like Kurzweil's been predicting the singularity 2030, 2035, 2040. We're 2023 now. And, the idea of the timing for the singularity is the closer we get to it, the faster the innovation happens on the bell curve.
Surprises, yeah.
The J curve. I was going to ask, so the reason I added smart voxels onto this was to ask you, based on all of your reading and research, what you know about what's going on in that space. Have you seen anything? How close do you think we are to having a house full of smart voxels?
I haven't seen it. I mean, one of the things that's been so interesting is that smart house adoption has been really slow, much slower than everyone thinks. And people tend to like, and this is the whole human use case, people really don't like smart things without analog optionality. And the idea of smart devices and doors that open and houses that heat themselves, and the adoption of that is really, really low. So unless you have a curve jump where the utility is so grand that you go, I just have to have this, I can't see it happening. The current smart devices, which are clunkier, RFIDs, NFCs, all of that stuff, image recognition of when you're home, when you're driving home, none of that stuff has happened. And it's all possible now, and the adoption is super poor. So I think that you need a big curve jump before that would happen. But if you did get that curve jump, and I don't know how that occurs, but some sort of smart nanotechnology, then you'd adopt it. But I think the security risks of smart things that we don't have full control on is one of the things that is holding people back from adoption. We've all seen the Black Mirror episodes where you get locked in your own house or your car or all of that kind of stuff. And it comes back to that PDOOM area. But I think smart things and smart items at a nano level, there will need to be some sort of a revolutionary moment before that becomes real. And it could be within a decade, because one of the things that's interesting is that the LLMs and the ability for machine learning, it's like we don't need to be involved in the development process to an extent now. It can find things that we won't be able to find, links between materials science and smartness that we could just never find. So that's why that J-curve, Kurzweil stuff becomes really important now, because it sort of is like we've unleashed the beast now. It's out of our hands.
Yeah, and one of the problems with adoption curves for this stuff, particularly when it comes to physical objects, is, okay, let's say somebody does come out with a smart paint tomorrow, and you got sort of an IP address in all of the paint voxels, and it's connected to the Wi-Fi, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, everyone needs to repaint their houses then to get this smart paint, right?
Yeah, it's not like you have a phone subscription that runs out in a year and you're going to get one anyway.
Yeah. All of this, whenever you have to spend money to replace existing things that are working fine, there needs to be a huge benefit payback, and a relatively short payback. It's like people getting solar panels on their roofs. Governments have been pushing that for decades. And it's very, very slow adoption. People are looking at payback curves and that kind of stuff. Why, if I'm going to invest a couple of grand on this, when am I going to get my money back? How long is it going to take? The move to electric cars is a similar sort of adoption curve.
The payback hasn't been there yet. Yeah.
It's very difficult to get people to spend money to replace something that's already working, unless the benefit of spending that money is enormous and, is fairly quick payback. Thing about LLMs, ChatGPT is, it's released as a software freemium model. You get free access to 3.5, $20 a month or whatever it is in Australia now for access to $25 a month, access to GPT-4. It's doable for most people, or some sort of, it's just like another Netflix subscription, right? Adoption for actual hardware, advanced hardware, I think is going to be trickier unless they launch it as a freemium model. What if they said, you know what, the paint is free, we'll even pay for the guys to come and paint your house for free, and then you pay $20 a month.
You might do it. In that case, you might do it.
For the paint, for using our smart paint.
Yeah, on the smart paint, if you had incredible utility where every wall has connectivity to the internet, where it can act like a quasi screen or an actual screen, who wouldn't do that?
Well, the last time I actually spoke to Robert Scoble was probably a year or so ago. We FaceTimed for a couple of hours, and he was trying to sell me on the idea that the long-term business model for Tesla is where all the cars are being driven by AI, and you don't actually buy a car anymore. You don't own a car.
Yeah, subscribe.
You subscribe to Tesla's driving service. You bring up your app.
Subscription. Yeah.
I need a car, and one turns up at your doorstep 3 minutes later, takes you wherever you want to go. And that's the business model for cars in the future, is you don't own it. Like the whole idea of everybody owning a car will seem archaic at some point in the future. Why would you own a car? That's like crazy.
Well, how can you show people how wealthy you are unless you have like a big piece of metal? And where are you going to put your golf clubs? I've always said that. It's like, well, this is, but then you start to get to the consumer side and the psychology of ownership, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think there will be, those sorts of things will take time to be adopted, but I think it'll be a lot faster than, I guess what I'm saying is the adoption of new technology, when it becomes physical technology, hardware, is got a lot to do with the business model. How do you make it accessible to people, particularly when AI is going to put a lot of people out of jobs? And we're waiting for Sam Altman to, have we talked about his the orb thing that he's doing? We haven't talked about that.
No, we haven't.
Sam Altman's got another startup that's called the Orb that goes along with OpenAI.
Yes, it's a global currency, isn't it? Did I get that right? He's going for the crypto bro side of it. He wants to take over the world.
It's a coin thing. Well, his basic view is, look, AI is going to create a lot of wealth, and it's going to put a lot of people out of jobs, but the economy needs people to have money. So we're going to take some of that wealth, and we're going to provide it as a UBI, universal basic income.
I hate UBIs. They're horrible, disgusting. Can we put that on the agenda for the next Futuristic?
Yeah, I'm really shocked.
Oh my God, UBIs are the worst fucking idea in fucking history, developed by people who are already fucking rich. Here's a crumb, and they don't understand basic economics. And I will tear that shit apart next week.
All right. Okay. Well, that's how we're going to finish this episode, is Steve dropping a cliffhanger for next week's episode. Why UBIs are the worst idea ever.
They really are. They're one of the fucking worst ideas I've ever heard in my whole fucking life. I swore 3 times. That's ducking. How fucking, that's how ducking pathetic they are. And by the way, they will fade away into obscurity. And they have done to a certain extent until you've raised it. And I'll go through that next week as well.
Good to chat, Steve. Have a good week, buddy.
You too, champion. Loved it.